All right, guys, welcome back to the Clack Shack. And had an interesting day today. Took the portable Clack Shack out for its maiden voyage, and everything on the shack worked as planned. The smoke eater, or the smoke purifier, as Comgrow calls it, performed nicely. The weather wasn't exactly ideal for the event. We had a little rain move through, and that kind of dampened things down a little bit and scared some people off. But all in all, it was a good day. Got to see a couple of people that were familiar with the channel, and my friend Bob visited the booth and hung out, and we talked shop for a little while. And so all in all, things went well. But tragedy did strike early on this morning, and I'm going to go over with you what happened. But the X-Tool 20 watt, it failed me. It let me down. It quit. It became unfunctional, whatever you want to call it. And luckily, I had enough insight, I guess you could say, that I had took my 10 watt with me as a secondary in case the 20 had an issue or whatnot. I could just simply snatch the 20 out, drop the 10 in, hook everything back up and go. And to my surprise, that's exactly what I ended up having to do. So here we are now, more or less. I brought it home and I've done an autopsy on it, and we're gonna pick up, and I'm gonna discuss with you what I found and some suggestions that I have, so that maybe you won't be a victim of this yourself. So stick around for a few minutes, and we're gonna go over what I found out. All right, guys, so the problem that I wound up today, I got there this morning at about, 6:30, and I was burning out some jigs to do some of the little stuff that I had taken with me. I had a couple of little small burns that I did, and all of a sudden, as I had a customer come up wanting something engraved, I went to frame the job out. Everything looked fine, and then when I started the job, the module would move maybe 6 inches, and that annoying alarm would go off. The limit switch alarm would go off. I'd rehome it, send it again. It would go off. I reached under there and tried to do everything I could to every connection possible, and I was unable to make the machine operate properly. Now, I've got a customer sitting there waiting on an engrave to be done, so of course, instead of making her wait, I just pulled the plug on it and dropped the 10 in and finished the job. All right. If you look right here, this was the problem that I found. The harness, when I put this thing together, I didn't really like the way the harness was a little long. The coating, this protective coating, was a little long, and the wire came out way down here and came up, and it didn't have a whole lot of room to put like a little service loop, so to speak, in the wire to keep it from having pressure on it. And so when I got to inspecting all my connections and looking at all of them, every one of them looked fine. I like to put like a little service twist in them just to show that they have enough slack that they're not being put under pressure. Well, this one was the only one that looked like it had an issue. And so what I had to do is I had to take a pair of wire cutters and split this coating a little bit and get this wire to come out back up here away from the top of the frame. And I gave myself enough to put myself a little working loop right there, so that the wire is not bent. It's kind of looped down, and it loops back up and comes back into the harness. And I put a couple of zip ties right there to hold it to that little leg, by all of the wires together and not just that one. And after doing that, it's functioned like it's supposed to. I've done a few movements with the machine. It appears to be functioning the way it's supposed to. I haven't had it giving any alarms since I did that. I went back and I retrained and put a little more bend in the wiring harness on the gantry where it comes off the gantry here. And I kind of just, I move the machine by hand, making sure that everything moves the way it's supposed to. The wire curls up behind the gantry and then rolls back out of the way. And everything seems good. And I'm gonna go ahead now, because I tried, guys, for a good solid 10 minutes to get this thing going again, and it just would not do it. But I'm gonna go ahead and show you. It is actually came back to life now. Other than needing to be cleaned, everything is working as it should. What I've got, I've built me out a little square, and I'm just going to frame that square. Need to raise that up a little. That's awfully close to the table. No bells, no alarms, no alerts. Everything is working as it should. So a couple of things that I want to add, guys, is personally, I think it wouldn't have hurt when they were building this machine to have made those cables maybe like a 1/2 or 3/4 of an inch longer to allow a little more room to put those work loops in. But if you take and you cut that sheathing back and pull a little more of that wire out, if yours is the way mine was, mine it had like literally the piece of wire was probably from the plug to the sheathing was probably 3/4 of an inch total. Okay, now I've got about 1.5 to 2 inches of the wire outside the sheathing. And I'm able to put that link, that loop in there to keep that tension from being transferred into that plug, so that when the machine moves or when it bumps or vibrates or whatever, that plug's not under pressure. It's not going to cause it to pop out, because I think that's what happened, is it moved out just enough to lose connection, but not enough to be visible. But it's working fine now. Luckily, my 10 watt, it's my workhorse. That thing's been with me for a year, and I dropped it in there. Now my camera, I had calibrated the camera for the 20 watt this morning. So my camera was a little off, because the work bed is different and the calibration is different between the two machines. But other than that, I was able to save the day. Luckily, I had both machines with me. But so the reason I wanted to show you guys that is, if you have the wire coming out of that harness, if you've got that really, really short piece of wire and that harness is putting pressure on that plug, just be aware that could happen. And next time you take your machine apart and clean it, you may want to check that. And if you have tension on that plug, you may want to consider doing the same thing and kind of splitting that sheath and pulling the wire out a little quicker, and trying to make it more of a fluid connection to the limit switches. So, but like I said, everything's working fine now. The module itself, I never had any problems out of it. It would try to move and the alarm would go off. So I knew it had to have been something with the limit switches, and I called myself looking at them, and everything was plugged up, but obviously that one wasn't plugged up as well as it should have been. I tried even taking my fingernail and reaching in there and smashing it in, but that's when I noticed that the harness was exerting force on the plug, kind of pulling on it a little bit. So that's what led to me basically taking all my harness loose from the gantry and redoing that and adding some slack into that. So, but anyway, guys, that's it for the moment, and just wanted to share that with you. Like I said, I've had my 10 watt for, man, I've had that thing now for a year now, right at it. October will be a year. And it has never let me down, but I don't know if it's my fault. I don't know if it's X-Tool, maybe didn't spend the time they needed to on cable management, or I didn't do it right or what, but I know there's a lot of folks I've heard complain about having problems with the limit switch alarm going off. And I think that's going to be the culprit. And I think one of the contributing factors is the way that that harness is made, and the fact that that wire is so short when you get it plugged up and you're trying to maneuver that harness around the gantry, it's applying force to that plug and holding pressure on it. So if you bump it or just vibration or whatever, it's allowing that plug to move. So I would recommend making sure you have enough to leave that little working loop so that there's the wire is not tight. And what I mean by working loop, guys, I'll kind of use my zip tie here for illustration. If you look at a wire, and this goes the same thing from if you're building computers and putting components inside computers, motherboards and stuff like that, this is something that you have to take into consideration. If the wire is like this, then that wire is tight. If there's any force exerted on the right side of this wire, it's going to put force, it's going to pull the left side of the wire. A working loop, if you will take and just kind of have you like a S, like that. If I've got an S right where that thing plugs in at, there's no force being, there's no pulling force on that plug, and so that plug is going to stay plugged up. If there is a slight pull, then this little working loop there allows for that wire to move and give and pull back and forth without being pulled loose and unplugging the plug. And so that's what I did. I took the wire, when I looked in there, when I first went in there, the wire was tight and it was bent over, almost at a 90-degree angle because of that harness. But I have went in now and the wire is more of an S, and that gives me a little room to where if that wire is pulled, it's not exerting force on that plug. And so I think that is a lot of the complaints I've seen about the Pros and about the 20 watts. I think when they added the limit switches, that's a good thing, but the wiring on the limit switches, it does need a little polishing. The connectors are okay as long as the wire is long enough not to have force on those connectors, because those connectors don't really have a locking mechanism. They don't snap in, they don't have a they don't have any kind of lock. They just plug in, and enough force is going to pull those out. So make sure that any of your plugs on the limit switches, just make sure that they're not tight and they don't have that straight line pull to that plug to be able to pull them loose. And you definitely don't want it pulling real hard sideways, because that could damage the board, pull the pins out of the board, or break the plastic piece completely out of the board. But that's the Clack Shack tip of the day, guys. All right, guys, I hope this helps you out. Maybe you won't have the same problems I had with the X-Tool. Like I said, I've had really good luck with my D1, and so far I've had good luck with the Pro. But I think that may be just like a little oversight. This thing is rather new, and I think maybe as time goes on, they'll address some of these little things. And like I said, it's easy enough for you to fix it yourself if you just pull that sheathing back and kind of cut it and pull that wire out a little earlier to give yourself a little slack to work with, and make sure that you don't have any pressure on there. So if this is helpful to you, I appreciate it. I'm glad that I could help you. That's kind of how the channel started and why the channel started, was to try to help other people out when I learn things from these machines, pass it on to you. So if you haven't already, guys, please hit the subscribe button. That just kind of helps keep me motivated, for one, and it also helps with the growth of the channel. I've got a lot of products that'll be coming around that I'm going to be testing out. And like I said, as always, guys, I'm going to give you my honest opinion. The folks that send me this stuff, before they send it, I tell them I'm going to be honest about it. And if you're not good with that, if you don't have that kind of confidence in your product, don't send it to me. So far, everybody has been really acceptable, and apparently they like the feedback. And I've got some more stuff that I'm going to be showing you guys. I've got a couple of machines that I think are going to be pretty cool, and maybe some options for some of you guys that are wanting to get into laser engraving but just aren't quite willing to spend the money to get the Pro 20 watt or something. There are other more affordable options depending on what you're going to do with it. So we'll be reviewing some of those in about the next month. I'll have some things coming out to go over with you and show you some more options. But anyway, thanks for stopping by, guys. And again, if you haven't already, hit the subscribe button. I appreciate the support and have a good day.